Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome back to yet another Final Fantasy XIV news video. Been a lot of these lately, but considering we're gearing up for 4.1, shouldn't be too much of a surprise. We're actually going to be taking a look at a new 4.1 feature, and that of simplified job gauges today. Now, if you watched the most recent live letter number 39, you at least got to see a couple of them. I believe Black Mage and Bard were the two in particular that we got to see. However, the latest post over on the developer's blog, which is titled Simple and Clean, who wrote this? Hold on, I'm going to the bottom. Who wrote this? Of course it was Lux Ferris. Why is that not a surprise to anybody? But anyway, this shows off some of the other job gauges. Now, it doesn't show off all of them, but it gives you somewhat of an idea of what the theme of the job gauges are, and that is to be simple and clean. So simple job gauges basically get rid of all of the flashy stuff and just give you the information you need. The first one we have right here is Paladin. Now, Paladin is the easiest job gauge among most of the jobs at the very least. The tank gauges in general probably the easiest ones to simplify. What did the normal job gauges do? They showed if you were in Shield Oath or Sword Oath, and they showed you how much your Oath gauge was filled. The one on the left is the old one, and then simple ones are the ones on the right. Now, keep in mind, you can still choose to use the original gauges. You don't have to use the simple UI gauges. But for those of you who just feel like maybe it's a little too much fluff, these simple gauges, which have an icon on the left, which lets you know Shield or Sword Oath in the case of Paladin, and how much gauge you actually have on the right via the bar itself, might be a little bit neater in your user interface, especially with some of the other changes coming in the UI. Now, Monk is one of those jobs that really didn't necessarily need one to be simpler. The basic one, the Grease Lightning Stack, is just a little smaller, which I guess is nice for me. I'm probably not going to change away from the normal one because I didn't find it to be that intrusive. But you do have just the five chakra points at the bottom. So again, a little bit simpler, but this is one of those jobs that really didn't need to be simplified as much. I feel like Black Mage was really one that needed it, but it does look nice. I do think that the Forbidden Chakra one actually does look pretty cool. Now, in order to switch to simple mode, this is just a quick demonstration. You go to your UI, which you're editing in the game, and you go to the specific UI element, the gauge that you want to edit, and you just switch the job gauge to simple. That's all you got to do in the user interface. You can also switch between the two versions using job HUD mode, and then since there's and then if there's two job gauges available, you can do job HUD mode 1 or 2. For example, looking at Monk, there's two job gauges. So your Grease Lightning would be job HUD 1, and your Forbidden Chakra would be job HUD 2. So you do job HUD mode 1, and it'll change the Grease Lightning between normal and simple, and then job HUD mode 2 would be between the Forbidden Chakra stacks. Looking at Summoner, now Summoner is one of those jobs I also kind of feel could use it. They have two different job user interface items, in that of their Ether Flow stacks and their Dreadworm Ether, as well as their Dreadworm Trance and Bahamut himself. Now the simple one, it does technically get the job done. It shows you that Dreadworm Ether has like Bahamut's head, and then this one just has like filled in. I'm colorblind personally, so for me the one on the right really doesn't work. I have a very hard time telling, especially in the middle of combat, if those are actually being filled or not. That might be the only one I'm not a big fan of. However, this one that keeps track of your Dreadworm Ether, I feel is way better, because before, like when we first saw the gauge, you just kind of had to know that it was 2, and you kind of will. Summoners doesn't really have a whole lot to keep track of with Bahamut himself. They're not like, oh, which Dreadworm Ether am I on? That's like the easy thing for them to do. But that being said, I kind of prefer just having these two little gauges at the bottom, and I would probably take job HUD 2 and make that simple in this case. Scholar, very similar. They just have the diamonds on their normal gauge brought down and remove all the little fluff on the side. And then the gauge itself is just flattened out without the fairy buff, and then letting you know when you actually have it active. And then they even show the machinist one, which is kind of nice. I think the overheated is probably my favorite part of this one, where it just says the words overheated instead of it blaring with a countdown. I think I also do prefer the simple one. I actually would take the bullets, same deal. Most of the things that just count to 3, I'd probably like to keep the same. The Black Mage one is definitely the one I feel like needed the most love, because it has so much information on it. But this is still really nice. I especially like what looks to be the cooldown on Hotshot being tracked right here. Now, it is tracked on the normal gauge right here, but I kind of just much prefer that the way Hotshot is tracked here with just the straight up buff bar. I will always prefer that for buff tracking over over the way that some of our job gauges do it, where it just like it's like a semicircle and it's counting down. I don't know. I don't like that. Same goes for the Huton timer on Ninja. I'm just not a fan of how fancy that looks, and I would definitely like something simpler for those. I think the next step I'd like to see is maybe the ability to use simplified looking buff bars for other major buffs that are part of your job. There's not really too many nowadays that I could personally think of off the top of my head, but it'd be nice to be able to track cooldowns with a bar period, as opposed to tracking them the way we currently do. Like, I'd kind of like a bar like this to track like my my infusion cooldown, for example, as opposed to something that's maybe necessarily job related. But these are huge improvements, in my opinion. I don't necessarily plan on using most of them, but there are some here that seem just pretty obvious and pretty nicely put together. So this isn't all of them. We only got to see 5 more on top of the ones we got to see in the live letter. So what do you hope that yours looks like? Obviously, Warrior is not going to be too complicated. It's probably going to look just like the Paladin one. The blood gauge one is probably going to be very similar, whether or not you're in grit. And then I wonder if it'll have like a flashy animation for when you actually have 50 blood, so you can actually start using abilities. And then what are some of the other ones? We saw the Bard one already. We've seen the Machinist one, the Summoner one. I guess Red Mages is already so simple. I'd imagine it's just 2 vertical bars. What else is there, man? Astros, I want to know. Like, what's Astros going to look like? Because Astros isn't I feel like Astros is one of those that's like kind of just perfect the way it is. They'll probably just get rid of the actual globe on it and just make it like 4 boxes that track all the information. White Mage can't be that complicated for lilies. Come on, it's probably going to be just like Etherflow, actually. It's just going to be something that fills up, I guess. Or I guess more like Grease Lightning in a sense. It's just going to be 3 diamonds. What else is there that I feel like I'm missing? Samurai's is pretty simple. That's just going to be a vertical gauge, and I guess the 3 sends, I don't know, that's only going to be a little simpler to look at. I kind of think the Samurai one is fine as is. Dragoon, I feel like we saw Dragoons as well. It's not here, but I feel like we've seen it. Maybe they briefly showed it off. Life of the Dragon can't be that difficult though. 3 eyes on the bottom. Yeah, we haven't seen it. 3 eyes on the bottom, the gauge itself for the timer, and then it probably changes color for Life of the Dragon, and that's it. So that one's probably really simple. Monk we saw. Yeah, okay. I'd say we've covered most everything. So you can probably imagine how the rest of the remaining ones are going to look like. But anyway, let me know if you're going to be using the simplified ones or if you're going to be using the normal ones after the patch actually comes out. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned for all the latest Final Fantasy XIV news, information, guides. Well, you guys know the drill. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.